the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome. Welcome in. Hey, thank you very much for listening to the little podcast that could. I am Chris Harris, which is convenient because this is the Harris Football Podcast. Remember, if you want to ask me questions directly, have me answer them live via streaming video, tune into Film Don't Lie Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, an hour before kickoff. Go to harrisfootball.com/videos for more info. Plus, during those streaming video sessions, I ask you trivia questions, and you can win fun swag, and you can win a Skype session with me, which a few people had just last night, thanks to Jeff and Aaron from Houston, and Sheridan from Seattle. Had a really nice time talking one-on-one with those guys about fantasy football, about life. You know, we talked about life, man. You may remember last week I mentioned we're going to have Harris Football merch. Well, that's coming. I think it'll be Monday. We're going to start having stuff for sale, like t-shirts and coffee mugs and whatever. And whatever profits there are will go to charity, both for the ASPCA and the ALS Association. And what's cool is that we have at least 3 designs that I know of that were submitted by listeners, and they're just great. We've got a footy pajama themed one, a duck hands themed one, and a T-Rich balloon themed one. They're awesome. And if you're a design person and want to get in on the act, it's not too late. Email us, heyharris@harrisfootball.com. Lastly, wanted to start with this email from Devin from Monticello, Kentucky. Hey, Chris, 2 quick questions. 1, if Big Ben is active for the Steelers this weekend, where do you move Antonio Brown in your weekly ranks? 2, with Michael Vick now insisting that he's Mike Vick, what's your midlife crisis cool guy name going to be? Part 1, Brown would be moved into probably the top spot, actually. More importantly, Part 2, I don't know. I throw it open to the listeners. What's my midlife crisis cool guy name going to be?
Today's kickoff.
On today's show, I will roll through the news of the day, including what could turn out to be an important free agent signing, talk about which guys did and didn't practice Wednesday and what that might mean for your fantasy squad. We'll do some Flexual Healing, which of course is a favorite segment every week where I try and find the most asked about flex players and talk about using them this week. I'll have a Thursday night preview, and then Craig Clark will come aboard to talk about the week in DFS. And Viola J did a song to introduce him. It's so good. Viola has outdone herself. Most of us are trying to find more time every day to get things done, so you can't let trips to the post office slow you down. Now you don't have to, thanks to Stamps.com. With Stamps.com, buy and print official U.S. postage right from your own computer and printer. Stamps.com will send you a digital scale. You can automatically calculate the exact postage you need for any letter or package, any class of mail. You'll never waste valuable time going to the post office again. Do everything right from your desk with Stamps.com. Print the postage you need, put it on your letter or package, and then just hand it to your mail carrier, and you're done. We use it here at the little podcast that could. When you win swag, it's delivered via Stamps.com. Right now, sign up for Stamps.com and use my promo code Harris for this special offer, a 4-week trial, plus a $110 bonus offer, including postage and a digital scale. So don't wait. Go to Stamps.com, and before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Harris. That's Stamps.com. Enter Harris. The signing I talked about is Ahmad Bradshaw reuniting with the Colts. You may remember on last week's waiver wire show, Bradshaw was maybe my number 4 or 5 ad that week because there were rumors that a signing was imminent. Now I'd say we have a Frank Gore handcuff. Josh Robinson was a super deep sleeper of mine this summer. He did get some run, looked like an interesting player for the future, too many ball security issues, and the Colts decided they didn't want to rely on him as the number 2 guy. So here comes Bradshaw, who lost the second half of last year with a broken leg. I'd say in a PPR league, Bradshaw, ownable in all leagues. You know, I'm not saying every team in a 12-team PPR league has a roster spot, But I do think there's probably a team in every league that could add him speculatively. We have to see what kind of game shape he's in. At least we know he knows the playbook. Deeper leagues, even standard scoring, yeah, I'm in. Bradshaw, nice pass catcher. You remember he went on a string of touchdown receptions early last year. I didn't rank him for this week, so I probably need to see him partake before I start him. But still, deeper league, I would say add him. You're probably getting the idea that I'm not so into reading very much into Wednesday practices. But, I should mention there were some notable participations on Wednesday that are at least, putting people on the front burner so we can watch what happens with them on Thursday and Friday. Alshon Jeffrey participated in the open portion of practice for whatever that's worth. He did so at times last week too. But then again, last week on Friday, he was shut down, which led to some speculation that he must have re-injured his calf or hammy. I guess the fact that he was in there doing something on Wednesday is a good sign. If he winds up active, I almost certainly use him. It's hard for me to think he sits out 4 games and then comes back as a decoy, right? But I don't think any conclusions can be drawn yet. I didn't add him back into my ranks just yet. Eddie Royal didn't practice Wednesday. We'll keep an eye. Thinking about Marquise Wilson as a possible sleeper if both guys sit again. LaShawn McCoy practiced for the Bills, which again, it doesn't guarantee anything, and I didn't put him back yet into the ranks either. But you have to say, feels like forward momentum. I'll be ready to use him for sure if he's active. Sammy Watkins sounds like he has a quite good chance to play this week, though his fantasy relevance for me really depends on Tyrod Taylor playing, and that's unknown at this point. Taylor reportedly did some stuff Wednesday, but that one feels totally up in the air. Rex Ryan told reporters Taylor has a sprained MCL. That's usually a multi-week injury, but like I said yesterday, Taylor did come back in last week's game after he hurt the knee. So, let's not listen to Rex Ryan's diagnosis, right? Let's not listen really to anything anyone says. Let's just see. Andrew Luck, it seems like he'll probably go. I think at the very least we'll have some clarity over the next couple practices. Devontae Adams practiced. Limited, I guess. Could return this week. Again, we'll see. If it's really a high ankle sprain, I have to admit I'm still suspicious. Lorenzo Taliaferro, a flag guy of mine, hurt his foot about 3 minutes after I planted the darn flag. Anyway, unfortunately, he's on IR, out for the year. It makes Buck Allen the pure backup to Justin Forsett, and we think Forsett will be all right on Sunday, but he didn't practice Wednesday with his ankle injury. The Ravens claimed Raheem Mostert off waivers. We're sponsored today by BetDSI.com, the online sportsbook where I personally play. And as I do every Thursday, I tried to guess the NFL lines before I actually looked at them. And this week I wound up being most surprised that the Lions are giving 3 against the Bears, and that the Falcons are only giving 3.5 against the Saints. So I guess Bears and Falcons are the play? Anyway, it's been a good run for me so far this season at BetDSI. I think it's the only place to play, a company that's been around just about as long as any online sportsbook, a company that gets A-plus reviews at many sportsbook review sites, and a company with great customer service. They're committed to paying you your winnings. I have a lot of fun on BetDSI.com, and I think you will too. And if you open an account right now and use my promo code Harris10, within a couple hours, they'll give you $10 to get started with. So give it a try. Go to BetDSI.com and use promo code Harris, no space, the number 10. And as I regularly say, things like BetDSI and DraftKings are things I enjoy in moderation. I don't get too crazy with my wager amounts. Mostly I use them for fun. But if you have a problem with moderation in this particular area, please go to gamblersanonymous.org for help.
For my lineup's unappealing, I need flexual healing, flexual healing. Oh, Harris, please help me win this time before I lose my mind.
So let's do this. Of course, you can find my single position ranks at harrisfootball.com, both standard scoring and PPR. Alas, there really isn't just enough time in the day for me to also do flex ranks, so that's why every week on the show at this time we do Flexual Healing. I ask you on Twitter, at Harris Football, about your flex questions, and I get literally hundreds of responses, and I open a big old Excel spreadsheet and pick out the most frequently asked about names. Idea here isn't so much to answer one person's question, but rather to talk about the most common players in such a way that hopefully it'll be useful to a lot of folks who might be wondering. And the player y'all asked about most this week was Melvin Gordon. No joke, there had to have been a dozen Gordon questions. Among them, Glenn O'Cana asks, Sammy Watkins or Melvin Gordon? Cesar A., Martavis Bryant or Gordon in a PPR? Jason Sloan, Alan Hearns or Gordon? Javi asks, Willie Snead or Gordon in a PPR? Yes Man, Allen Robinson or Melvin Gordon, half point per reception, Brian Stapleton, Antonio Gates or Melvin Gordon, and they went on and on. I spoke about what I saw from Gordon on Tuesday's show. You know, we're probably never getting the upside we hoped we'd get in terms of workload because Woodhead is a useful player and the Chargers trust him. San Diego also has the problem of a, pretty terrible and very banged up offensive line. But I do see good things from Gordon on tape. He strikes me as the right kind of flex in a lot of circumstances. I love that they threw it to him later in the game on Monday night. I think this combination of speed and balance that he has, I think it's going to make him a pretty solid fantasy option. So where's the junction point for Gordon among wide receivers? I think Allen Robinson, even with Blake Bortles' shoulder an issue, I think I play him over Gordon in all formats for the upside. Not if Chad Henne plays, but as long as Bortles is in there. I know folks are psyched about Willie Snead and Martavis Bryant's return, but I think I go Gordon over those guys. So the middle ground, the gut truster area, I think it's Hearns, Watkins only if Tyrod Taylor plays, maybe Antonio Gates. I think that's the neighborhood where I don't have a clean and pat answer for you. Trust your gut. I think Gordon starts finding the end zone just via game flow, be it the law of averages eventually, but not so far. Next up is Jarvis Landry, and Jay Brenning1 kicks it off by asking, of course, Jarvis Landry or Melvin Gordon. And then following that up, we had a bunch of other Landry questions, among them Jordan Dent, C.J. Anderson, or Jarvis Landry, Christopher Wolf, DeMarco Murray, or Landry in a PPR, Marshall Toy Sports, Chris Johnson or Landry in a PPR, DJ Williams, Frank Gore or Landry in a half point per reception. So, boy, in almost any case, I don't want to say any case, but in a lot of cases where Landry's being considered in a PPR, boy, I think I have to go Landry. It seems like a million years ago since the last time the Dolphins actually played a game, but, listen, maybe we don't know what they're going to look like with a new coach, but he had 8 catches in 3 games straight to start the year, and then failed to reach that mark as the team was melting down in London against a really good Jets pass defense. Murray and CJ2K are tempting. Murray especially finding something last week. But in a PPR, I think I make the bet that Landry goes back to being really, really safe. I grant you maybe not a touchdown maker. So if you feel like you need upside from this particular spot, okay, take the shot on the running back, scoring multiple times. Other things being equal, even in a good matchup like C.J. Anderson has against the Browns, I'm going Landry there too. In a PPR, I think the first running back I start over Landry is Dion Lewis, and that's pretty high on my PPR running back list. In standard, he's less tempting. More like the areas like the Bengals running back, something like that. Speaking of whom, Jeremy Hill was a major topic of inquiry as people ping-pong back and forth between loving him and wanting to drop him, between 3 touchdowns and squadouche against the Seahawks last week. B asks Tyler Eifert or Jeremy Hill. Victor Gradowski asks Brandon Cooks or Hill. Michael Malloy, Jordan Matthews or Hill. Rick Garcia, Martavis Bryant in a PPR or Hill. Yeah, the Bengals were in catch-up mode the entire game, certainly in the second half last week. Hill winds up playing 17 snaps. And this is what we mean by a game flow-dependent running back. We can't predict game flow, which means Hill isn't the guy you thought you were drafting. He's essentially the platonic ideal of Alfred Morris, which is a bummer, because Morris, really game flow-dependent, could be kind of a bummer to own. I do think Hill probably gives you a better chance of getting into the end zone than Morris does with that offense. But he needs the Bengals to land inside the 5-yard line sometimes. In 3 of 5 games, Jeremy Hill has played 20 snaps or fewer. So Hugh Jackson can talk about who his starter is all he wants. This is a game flow dependent situation. You heard on this show on Wednesday, Jake Seeley say he'd much rather use Gio Bernard than Hill, even in a standard scoring league. And I think that's a defensible position. I'm not quite there, but I get the agita. I think I go Hill over Martavis as long as Vic is the Pittsburgh quarterback. I think I go Jordan Matthews over Hill, even though Matthews has been disappointing too. Cooks, boy, that's the tough one. That's the gut truster, the 50-50, whatever you want to call it. I'll say Cooks ahead of Hill and Hill ahead of Eifert, but I think that's the right neighborhood. All right, I want to get to a few more of these most asked about players, so I better go a little faster. Dante Moncrief upset some folks by taking a backseat to Andre Johnson on last Thursday. Also seems like a million years ago. Now he's a flex guy at best for most folks. Andy K says T.J. Yeldon or Moncrief, Jared Moore, Justin Forsett or Moncrief. Tyler says DeMarco Murray or Moncrief in a PPR. And he also says TLPTC is the truth. And that means the little podcast that could. And that means Tyler is cool, and cooler than I am, for sure. I think I can, says C.J. Anderson or Moncrief. Jeffrey Morton says he needs his Flexual Healing. Chris Johnson or Dante Moncrief in a PPR. And there were more Moncrief questions, too. This is a bear of a situation. The Colts wide receiving. We can't predict usage when it gets altered so suddenly, especially. It had been all Moncrief and no Johnson, and then all of a sudden it was Johnson. And in 2 receiver sets, too. It wasn't just the touchdowns. There's way more risk than I'd like. Maybe the Colts have decided, nope, we like Johnson as our big target. Moncrief, you're going to have to wait. I don't know what they'll do. I'll be able to tell you better after Sunday night. I think Forsett, Yeldon, Murray, Chris Johnson, I think I'm playing all those guys ahead of Moncrief, even though I know Moncrief has great upside. I think C.J. Anderson, that's the neighborhood. If you're going to listen to this and look at my ranks on harrisfootball.com, I think that's the gut trusting area. If I think I can needs me to flip the coin, I'll say Moncrief, even though I like the matchup against the Browns for Anderson. I think 3 separate folks had the exact same Lamar Miller question. Blake Bishop, Peter Song, and our old buddy C. Harris Shelf all asked Lamar Miller or Jordan Matthews. If it's me, I think I keep playing Matthews. I'll talk about Miller. I guess I want a week to see if Miller's any different under their new regime. My philosophy here is he's been bad enough that I'm okay if I miss his first good game with him on my bench. But, that's my philosophy. I don't think that's the right philosophy. Along those same lines, Doug Hansen wants to know Miller or Jeremy Maclin. And I say Maclin. Whatever works, asks Eric Decker or Lamar Miller in a PPR, and that's certainly getting closer. I think that's the gut-trusting area. I'm okay if you feel like you want to bet on Miller's return to relevance in this situation. Finally, Charkandrick West got a bunch of questions, and of course, this is going to come down to your personal feelings about his usage. There's no certainty whatsoever on West versus Nile Davis, or, as I like to call it, the West Nile virus. Huh? Anybody? Crickets? Nicholas Balfour asks Charkandrick West or Pierre Garçon. Dan asks West or Martavis Bryant. Ian Bird says West or Dante Moncrief, our buddy. Scott asks West or Hankerson for Thursday night. Luke Bettis asks West or John Brown. Well, there are a couple names here I use West over. I'm just as uncertain about Martavis Bryant, so I might as well use West. I feel the same way about Pierre Garçon going up against a very, very good Jets pass defense. Hankerson, man, I'm not buying on him. I think there's something rotten in that usage. I'll take the shot on West there too. But when it comes to John Brown, maybe even Moncrief, that's where West's uncertainty gets me a little bit. We're also sponsored today by our friends at DraftKings. I get asked a lot whether I think there's an advantage to be had on DraftKings by playing their contests that do include the Thursday night game players, but refusing to select any of those players for your team. I think the logic there is sometimes these Thursday games are low-scoring stinkers, but folks who play in these particular contests are playing partly so they'll have a rooting interest in the game they'll be watching anyway, so maybe there's a market inefficiency there. I guess I wouldn't want to be too broad in that strategy, though, and frankly, Falcons-Saints feels like it'll have some points, so maybe this week, no. But I do love that folks are sending in DraftKings strategy questions, because that means you're buying in, and I'm in too. I'll be playing in the Millionaire Maker this weekend, which I'll be talking about in a moment with our DFS expert, Craig Clark. If you've never tried DraftKings, now's a great time. They'll give you a free entry if you use my promo code Harris. So try it now. I know you'll have fun. I'm very sure of it. That's DraftKings.com, promo code Harris.
Thursday night preview.
Well, all eyes will certainly be on Julio Jones in Thursday's game. The word as of my recording this seemed to be that, the consensus was Julio would be able to play with a bad hamstring. But of course, we never have a guarantee what even a great player's role will be when he's out there potentially at less than full strength. I mentioned this yesterday. I do think it comes down to your personal philosophy. It's funny, Brandon White on Twitter reminded me of a Brandon Marshall game last year when he was still with the Bears, when they went to San Francisco for a national TV game, and Marshall was hobbling around, and a lot of folks sat him, and Marshall went ahead and scored 3 touchdowns. But of course, by the same token, we've seen Calvin Johnson games where he was out there as a decoy, and the truth is that nobody who's not in the locker room for the Falcons can tell us what the plan is going to be, and they have no incentive whatsoever to let the Saints know. So you really do have to ask yourself, and this is a legitimate question, which would hurt you more, to have him start for you and do nothing, or have him on your bench and go crazy? I know for me the latter is more painful, so I'll be starting Julio in a league I own him in tonight, but honestly, I'm not being patronizing here. If you feel the other way and you sit him, we really don't know, and I definitely would not begrudge that. Matt Ryan, actually the number 12 quarterback in fantasy, and Drew Brees is number 20, although not entirely fair to Brees since he did miss a game. But if I'm comparing quarterbacks, I do feel better about using Ryan than I do Brees. You can take a look at the Harris Index on harrisfootball.com for a quick indication why, matchup-wise. But running backs have performed quite a bit above average against the Falcons on the whole, so I think you can use Mark Ingram in this game and hope for a short score. Brandon Cooks, I mentioned earlier, I liked the way he was used last week. They had a mix of downfield stuff and the shorter things that he'd been completing the few weeks prior. I'm a little lower on Willie Snead than some folks are. Skills-wise, I don't see a lot of specialness there, but volume has been there. I can't argue against that. I still view him as an acceptable flex. I would love to see him flash some skills beyond the pretty basic in this game. The Roddy Hankerson weirdness continues. And Jacob Tamme, I did relent to the feedback from yesterday's show, and I put him in the tight end ranks, but he's number 20 on my list. I guess we'll see. I'm a little skeptical, as you can tell. But see that? I listen to you guys and gals.
Today's guest.
And today's guest is Craig Clark, our DFS expert. You can find him on Twitter at PCClark59. I hope you'll follow him. And Craig, we've got it. We've got your intro song. You requested Kesha. Here it is. Kesha, just for you.
DFS Talk, we got the key. It's Clark on the pod. Watch out for his knees. Play on daily. Follow his lead. We go head to head. You roll out for free. It's time to place your bets and take
Craig.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Thank her very much. Her name's Viola.
Yes, Viola.
Thank her very much. That's amazing.
Well, you just thanked her. She listens every day. Viola's amazing.
I was really worried it'd be something that really went after me, but it's nice and sweet, and it's really nice.
Well, we do have a shot about your knees.
Yeah.
Which, they aren't good. So people probably should be listening to you for DFS, but not asking you to play pickup basketball.
If you want to go for a walk with me, you better do it soon.
All right, well, that was awesome. And folks who want to submit songs should really be submitting songs because we'll play them if they're great. I mean, we'll play them if they're not great. I did one. Craig, when are you doing one?
I cannot do one. You really didn't ask me if I'm doing one.
All right, so let's talk Week 6. We're going to talk DFS, as the song says. And let's start with, I figure I'd just go position by position. This is a week where you have the Falcons, a likely candidate to be used on Thursday night. A lot of folks won't, play Thursday night games, and so they won't be using any Falcons. And then, Drew Brees sometimes gets a little love. Mm-hmm. So
Willie Snead.
Yeah, Willie Snead, the bane of my existence, Willie Snead. So, we're looking at the quarterback position to start, just because I'm going to kind of go in order, even though I know putting together teams, I'm not typically looking at quarterback first. And I know your point on the blog on harrisfootball.com today is that there have been points scored sort of everywhere from any position on the quarterback ranks. It doesn't mean every quarterback scoring points every day, but you can find cheap quarterbacks. Are you thinking cheap quarterback in Week 6?
I am, especially this week. It seems like this is the week that I don't think just me, but a lot of people are going to take a cheap quarterback. It's where the value is. Everybody saw Blake Bortles last week, and you look down the line.
He didn't play well either.
Say it again?
I said he didn't play well either. He just had a lot of points.
He just scored well.
Yeah.
But, Bortles is cheap, and Cutler is cheap, and Matthew Stafford, if you want to go there, is cheap, and Brian Hoyer's cheap, and
Colin Kaepernick is cheap. You have Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick is minimum.
Yeah.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is minimum.
Yeah.
So you can really save some money here if you want to get better players down your list, because it's getting harder to find values farther down the list in the other positions.
Yeah, especially running back. Wow. So if you were a person like myself who is very, very tempted by any passing game facing the Ravens, mm-hmm. who have had such incredibly, for the second year in a row, incredibly bad injuries in their secondary, and they're a mess, and the guys they pay a lot of money to, I watched that film and just aren't playing well. Can you talk? I almost talked myself into Kaepernick. Can you talk yourself into Kaepernick?
If you can get the Kaepernick who played last week, I would absolutely take him.
Well, but we can't get that guy. We have to get this week's guy.
If you get the Kaepernick who played against Green Bay, I want no part of it, right? So it still puts butterflies in my stomach to take him.
Yeah. And I think the way I'm going to try to buy into the 49ers passing game is Bolden. He wound up on my ticket. And I should mention this week, I kind of tried to take, just to mix it up a little bit, I took the position of less of the 50-50 roster and more of a GPP type roster for my own ticket, so for whatever that's worth. But Bolden wound up on it. And here's a question for you, because I think you're pretty decent at projecting percent ownership for guys. For these quarterbacks who are cheaper than $6,000 on DraftKings, and actually cheaper than $5,500 on DraftKings, like Bortles, Cutler, Stafford, Kaepernick, what are they going to top out at ownership-wise, since you're saying this is a week when a lot of people are going to go cheap at quarterback?
If Bortles truly plays, and I think he will, 10, 11, 12%, something like that.
Is that enough to make you shy away if you're in the GPP?
No, I mean, only thing that makes me shy away is fear of not getting points. That's really it.
Yeah. But I mean, other things being equal, if you could compare player X to player Y and you projected them for right around the same kind of performance, you'd rather have the guy who wasn't owned as much.
For sure. And like Stafford's not going to be owned much, right? And he's right in that range, and he could do well. He's not facing super hard team in the Bears, and he could do well, and he's going to be a lot less owned.
All right, so rank the value relative to their performance and their percent ownership between those four guys. I got Bortles, Cutler, Stafford, Kaepernick.
I think that's it right there. Bortles,
Okay.
Cutler, Stafford.
Kaepernick, okay. I took Dalton for 5,700.
Dalton's going to be pretty lightly owned, I think. People are going to be scared of the matchup, and there's more attractive, not necessarily more attractive, but players that are more interesting. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good call.
All right. I feel like I got the endorsement, and I feel like that's the kiss of death. All right, so let's move on to running back. So you mentioned it. You look at the running back roles price-wise, and there just aren't many values. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's getting hard to find values. Even some of the cheaper ones are dinged up, so you're a little nervous, with like Yeldon or Hyde, or if you wanted to go there.
Yeah.
So you're finding you're spending more on running back than you have in previous weeks.
Yeah. So let's talk Pats, Colts. I touched on it on Wednesday's podcast with Jake Seeley. It's a question of predicting game flow, right?
I'm great at it.
Well, you're terrible at it, and I don't think anybody's good at it, right? That's, you get it 50-50. You feel really smart when you're able to predict how a game is going to go when you do it. Unfortunately, you forget all the times when you didn't. And the NFL is that way. The NFL is not, stratomatic football or whatever. It's not the thing where you just plug and play and you always get the same result. Same exact teams can play the game 10 times and get a wildly different game flow, wildly different result. But this is a tempting one to think we know what's going to happen because we've seen the Patriots run all over the Colts so many times.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts defense really, it's a little bit better up the middle. I think they got those two young kids, those defensive tackles that get a lot of pub when they're on national TV, that's for sure.
They played pretty well against the Jets that one game.
Right. And, they've been okay against running backs, but, they haven't been great. And then you've got the Patriots who, let's have even more crutch arguments in there, which is, they're mad, they Deflategate, they hate the Colts, they want 80 points, they're never going to stop, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to attack the same way they did before. I assume, what ownership would you project for Deion Lewis and LeGarrette Blount in this week?
I think Blunt's going to be higher than Lewis, although I'm leaning the other way. I like Lewis better just simply because he's such a better player.
Okay, so in DraftKings, Lewis is 5,800 and Blount is 4,400. And obviously, if you think Blount is good, so what percent ownership do you project for Blount?
Probably right around 20.
That's high. That's real high. So when a cheap guy like that is high like that, maybe 1/5 of all the entries, we're gonna have a million entries. You have a lot of entries on DraftKings. If 20% are on a guy that has some upside and is really cheap, does that tend to make you shy away or be more interested, or what do you think?
The fact that he's going to be a high percent ownership, and I don't feel so good about him.
Basically, you think he's a trash bag.
I think he's a trash bag. Yes.
So you don't want him. But that doesn't necessarily, in all cases, when you project 20% ownership for a guy at $4,400, that doesn't automatically disqualify him from your roster.
It's not disqualifying from my rosters so much as sometimes I'm going to need a player that's a running back at that price, and there's not a lot to choose from.
Yeah. I have a almost exactly priced running back who's been just as much of a trash bag this year that I'm going to have on my team, who is C.J. Anderson.
Oh, yes. He's finally priced right.
Yeah. So he's 4,500 on DraftKings. What do you think of it? Do you think he will be owned as much as Blount?
No, not at all.
Yeah, nowhere near,
I don't think
right?
Anywhere near as much.
Right. And this is entirely based on matchup for me. It's a road game, but Denver goes to Cleveland. And, I look at the Harris Index, and the Harris Index are just not based on what I think. It's just based on numbers. And the Browns have been very, very generous to opposing running backs. And the hope is, again, this is a GPP entry of mine. This is not a 50-50 entry of mine. So Charkandrick West, priced at minimum, 4,000. You did not wind up with him on the ticket that you submitted to me. Were you tempted by him?
I put him in, I took him out, I put him in, I took him out, I took him out, I took him out. I just don't know that he's going to be the guy.
Right.
Last week, you had one big flub and you were done. Last week, a lot of the guys that hit, everybody had. And you took people like I took, like Clay or Demaryius Thomas. And they just killed tickets, and I'm worried that you take West and you might get 1.3 points.
Yeah. Because
you might not. You might get a lot. But.
Right. For a minimum guy, I assume you imagine double-digit % ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Do you imagine?
I do. Double-digit. He's the new toy.
Yeah.
He's got a great name. People are going to be like, I want him.
The Charknado, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's move.
Maybe he's great. I'm trying to get him in my commissioner-style league.
Right.
Because I had
Charles.
I had Charles, but we'll see if I get him today.
Yeah, well, you didn't get him in large. I did get him in Lebowski.
Okay.
I bid $36 for him in Lebowski, and that was enough. So we'll see. I'm not playing him this week for commissioner style, but yeah, interesting. All right, so let's move on to wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And wide receiver, obviously the feeling of wide receiver always is somewhat a feeling of liberation after you look at running backs because there are just so many more wide receivers.
Yeah, it's nicer.
But of course, you're having to pick 4 of them in a lot of cases as opposed to just pick 2 of them. So did you lean away or towards expensive guys this week at wide receiver?
I didn't go towards I'd love to get Beckham if I knew he was healthy, but I'm just so far staying away. I'm not touching Demaryius Thomas ever again. So I'm going down the second half of the first page and starting about there.
Okay.
Everybody loves Edelman, and I do too. I mean, it's hard not to like him. And DeAndre Hopkins, if they're going to throw to him 20 times, I fully expect Hopkins to get a whole lot of play this week. Edelman to get a whole lot of play.
Yeah. It's hard to find games where Edelman doesn't get a whole lot of play. They just don't have a lot of guys to throw to.
Yeah.
The
but
Patriots.
A couple weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, he hurt teams. So.
Yeah. So, my thoughts on Patriots-Colts, comes down to the Patriots just lost their starting left tackle, right?
Yeah,
he wasn't playing great, but that's not good.
Yeah, you don't know whether that hurts the running game or the passing game or how much it hurts everything.
I mean, Marcus Cannon, I don't think can play at all. And he's now the starting left tackle for your New England Patriots, or I should say my New England Patriots. That is scary. The interior of that line has been a big question mark, and given the Colts having a little bit of a resurgence in the middle and not having much of a pass rusher on the edge, even though the left tackle is out, I sneakily expect this to be a throwing game for the Patriots and not a LeGarrette Blount game. Isn't that nuts? I mean, I'm probably double-crossing myself there.
Well, I mean, Lewis has been such a good player.
And that would be more of a throwing game.
Right, and I don't see how clearly Belichick can see how you don't do it, but why would you go to a player who's so inferior when you've got such a better option?
It's the Jonas Gray phenomenon, right? One week he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and then not even on the team anymore. Yeah. So that leads me towards Edelman as well. I'm very interested in having Edelman.
He's 25% at least ownership.
25%, yeah. How about Beckham? So I'm going to full disclosure for I think I tried to outguess the market here, and maybe that's a bad move, but I have Beckham on my GPP ticket.
Uh-huh.
And I again may have double-crossed myself, but I thought to myself, okay, I'll take the shot that he is healthy enough to play and that he's normal, and I'll think he's going to be owned 5% because everyone's freaked out about his hamstring and he's so expensive. Do you think I'm overthinking?
It won't be 5%. It might be 10, something like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you're overthinking it. He plays well if he's in there, I think. So it's just the injury. It's just monitoring the injury.
Yeah, and
I want him too.
Yeah,
too. I just couldn't afford it in the end because I took 2 good running backs. National
TV game. Eagles really good against the run, not as good against the pass, and I don't see any corner on that Eagles defense that I would feel comfortable saying, yeah, you just go get Odell and we're good. Like, you got to account for him, and they'll play a lot of zone, and I think he'll get free. But you're right, it comes down to the hamstring.
Yeah, and Eli's been playing great.
Yeah, I think what I'll say about the Giants on tape, and I know there's a ton of Giant fans who listen. See if you agree with my assessment. I mean, it feels like the past 2 games, they've really tried to go no huddle, but not hurry up. They're essentially trying to trap. They're playing that Patriot game of trying to trap
bad matchups, or
just defenses that they can excel against. Bad matchups, yes, that's what it is. Like, basically, we like the personnel we have in the field against the personnel that you have trapped on the field. We're not going to go fast, but we're going to snap it as soon as you try to substitute. Mm-hmm. And that has really worked to Eli's strength, and been able to get the ball out of his hand quick. And for an offensive line we all thought would stink, he's not taking any hits. He's not under a lot of pressure. That's going to be tested against the Eagles, but I would have thought it would be tested against the Bills too. So that's very interesting. Jags receivers, do you have a ticket where you go Bortles, Hearns, Robinson?
I have started them, and then I pulled them back. I mean, Hearns may be injured. I don't know. It seems like he's getting worse each day, but I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I'm keeping Robinson in on a few tickets. I've got Bortles on a few tickets. I've got the two of them, but I don't have Hearns as of yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was last week's winning strategy.
Yeah. It's not going to be this week. It's not. I just know it's not. Yeah. So, Bortles has a shoulder injury that he'll be able to play through, but there are questions about arm strength, and, we're never going to know what the real thing is until we see him play, but I do think it lowers the percent chance that Robinson is huge on a deep ball because, he's the one they send deep. You don't see Hearns, for all Hearns' speed, you don't see him going deep as much this year. Mm-hmm. Robinson's the one they're sending down the field, and my thought is, boy, I have some concerns. But, my biggest concern in Jacksonville is just Blake Bortles is a bunch of mirrors standing there looking like a quarterback.
Yeah, well, I went out to lunch yesterday with a Houston fan, and he could not have said worse things about the defense.
Yeah, I actually mentioned off the top of the show that I Skyped with a couple of people from Houston who won trivia on the Film Don't Lie segments, and they both were less than enchanted with how the Texans defense is playing. Very, very shaky corner play for sure. Tight end. Oh. There's the one guy you're going to spend for, and everybody else is the same, right? Everybody else is kind of in that 4 to 5,000 range. So I paid for Gronk last week and paid for it. Do you find yourself tempted?
I haven't been. It's just I took the running backs that I took were Forte and Foster.
Yep.
And once I did that, all my money was gone. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. Well, you also took DeAndre Hopkins, so
DeAndre Hopkins, right? And I took Edelman, right? So I took those 4 players, and after that, I was scratching and clawing for every dollar.
So if you're, a lot of people will be. So let's cut to the chase. If you were scratching and clawing among options like, from 4 to 5,000, you got Tyler Eifert, you got Antonio Gates, you got Julius Thomas.
Yeah, you got Bennett.
Martellus Bennett.
Barnage, Barnage is a little scary against Denver.
So if you're looking in that 4 to 5,000 range, which is where I think most folks will be looking, how do you start to assess that group?
I love Eifert, but he's so hot and cold. 2 great weeks, 2 awful weeks.
To be fair, one of the awful weeks he should have had a touchdown except for a stupid rule.
Yeah. Bennett, I think, will bounce back after last week. Mm-hmm. He had such it seemed like a good opportunity, and it didn't happen. But as the Chicago wide receiving options are in flux always, I just think he's very stable, and he's a nice choice. He's too expensive for me though at 4,800. Even then, I had to go down to 4,000 and take a flyer on Julius Thomas. I'm starting to think about Jordan Cameron even cheaper because I think a lot of people are forgetting about the Dolphins. For good reasons.
Well, in the short passing game, Cameron should be featured in the short passing game.
Yeah, so he's the $3,000 tight end I like. At the 4,000 range, Clay just burned me so bad last week.
Yeah. But that's that's what he's going to be. He's a blocker. He's an H-back type. He's just going to be. You talk about Eifert being hot and cold. That's what Clay's going to be.
Yeah, and Gates. Who knows? I think you could do a lot worse than Gates.
Yeah. So your ticket, I'm gonna read off to folks. We've talked about a bunch of the names. You wound up with Cutler and Forte because you love the Bears. Mm-hmm. You wound up with Arian Foster, DeAndre Hopkins because you love the Texans.
I love them.
Julian Edelman and Eric Decker because you like that Patriots-Jets rivalry.
Yeah, that's not what I was thinking, but yes, for sure.
Julius Thomas at tight end. Anquan Bolden is your flex, as he is mine. And you wound up with the Browns defense against
the Browns is the weakest. The Broncos offense has been sneaky, not just bad in terms of not getting Demaryius Thomas any points, but they haven't been hurting defenses either.
Well, and plus turning it over. Those ducks to Charles Woodson last week, not so good. Yeah.
But I think that's a weak call, the Browns. That's again because I spent all my money. The Browns are really cheap.
Browns are 2,200 on DraftKings, and the Broncos, who I took, are 3,700 as the highest option. So, All right, so then my team, and again, this is not a 50-50 team. This is meant to be more of an outlier, trying to play trend, and also try to pick good players. I have Dalton at quarterback, as I mentioned. I picked Eddie Lacy. I feel like
not now when, right?
Yeah, I feel like. Tell me what Lacy's percentage you think might be.
It's going to be. People know about San Diego.
Yeah.
As a run defense, and they're going to exploit him. I think Lacy's going to be 15 to 20%.
Okay. Well, that's higher than I thought. I thought maybe it would be like 10, and then I would be in clover. I mentioned C.J. Anderson. I mentioned Odell Beckham. I picked Larry Fitzgerald. The Steelers are not good covering the pass. The Rivers situation last week, the Chargers just can't block anybody up front, so I don't feel like that's a big indicator. Keenan Allen's, results last week are not a big indicator. Mike Wallace, I think people should look at still exploiting the Chiefs' pass defense.
Okay.
It wasn't Martellus Bennett who did it last week, but it was a bunch of no names, but it happened. And then I have Eifert, Bolden, and the Broncos on defense. So
that's solid up and down. I'm worried about Bolden too. I just remember the game against Green Bay with San Francisco where
sure. Well, it all comes
was
down.
Scared to death to throw it in bounds.
Yeah, it all comes down to what Kaepernick looks like, and I just think it's a very exploitable matchup. For a while, I actually had Kaepernick and Bolden, and then I was like, all right, I don't mind a stack, but that stack feels like it's going to give me an ulcer.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this was great, and now you have your own song, so we're going to be playing your intro music like every single time, every single week. Oh man.
My song is positive and it rocks and it's just I'm very very pleased.
Well, we'll thank Viola again. Now she just heard us say it. So thanks for doing it, man. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, I appreciate it.
And that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can follow Craig for DFS advice on Twitter at PCClark59. I hope you'll come aboard for the Film Don't Lie video stream Thursday night, an hour before kickoff, and I'll try and answer your flex and trade and season-long questions, as many as I possibly can. Plus, we'll have some fun trivia questions where you can win prizes. Go to harrisfootball.com/videos for more information. And follow me on Twitter at harrisfootball. I'll tweet a link there, too. Hey, enjoy the game tonight. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The end theme is Tooth and Claw by OU Villain. Subscribe to the Harris Football Podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.